Hi everyone, welcome back. Michael Sandler here, best-selling author and your host on Inspire Nation. Check out our website where you'll find podcasts, tips, videos, blogs, and more at inspirenationshow.com. Today we'll be speaking with one of the few true explorers left on the planet to truly go where no one has gone before, or at least live to tell the tale about it. His name is Ben Saunders, and his self-described job is dragging heavy things around in cold places. While 12 people have been to the moon and 5,000 people have climbed Everest, he's one of only 2 people, including his teammate, to have ever attempted to walk from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole and back and live to tell about it. The trip is so daunting, the last attempt was made in 1912, and all 5 teammates perished on their return journey. For the trip, Ben and his teammate Tarka Laherpiniere would attempt to walk 1,800 miles, pulling 440-pound sleds behind them, over the highest continent, a high-altitude mountain range, and the Beardmore Glacier, a 120-mile glacier of epic proportions that climbs and descends over 7,000 feet, with crevasses and breaks in the ice over 200 feet deep. It's easily one of the most treacherous glaciers in the world. Ben started out as an Arctic explorer of epic proportions. At 23, he attempted to reach the North Pole. At 25, I believe it was, he completed a 240-kilometer round trip to the North Pole from a temporary Russian station. And at 26, became the first person to walk from Russia over the frozen Arctic Ocean, cross the North Pole, and continue all the way to the coast of Canada. You're a wild man. It was an epic journey where, in his words, he was the only person for 5.4 million square miles. Personally, I've run at minus 44 degrees. I've run in sub-zero hurricane conditions, loved to snowshoe above 12,000 feet, and I've completed a 5,000-mile, 40-day solo unsupported bike ride. But that's nothing compared to what Ben's done. So I'm fascinated by human endeavors in both what the human spirit is capable of and how we bring those dreams to reality. For you don't just set off on an 1,800-mile, 105-day journey across the largest frozen continent in the world without incredible planning, mental, physical, and spiritual. Today we're going to talk with Ben about his great adventure, the longest Arctic expedition ever, with 69 marathons back to back to back, and in sub-zero, often whiteout conditions, best described by the newspaper article, 2 explorers just completed a polar expedition that killed everyone the last time it was attempted. We'll talk about how he made it across, what it felt like to live like a penguin, and why he ended up swearing more than a sailor. It should be a fascinating ride. Welcome to the show, Ben. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready to go. Yeah, it's great to be here, Michael. Thank
you. Well, before we get started, we pushed back this interview a couple times, and the reason is a little bit harrowing. I wonder if you could share what recently happened.
Of course, yeah. So we were absolutely scheduled to speak 2 weeks ago, and a few days before it happened, I managed to crash my bike. Was just out on a Saturday afternoon training ride with my girlfriend Liz, and it was a beautiful sunny day, no cars around, quite a fast descent. I'm definitely not a beginner cyclist. You know, I've been racing bikes for 20 plus years, and had never until now had a serious accident, and managed to come off, literally land on my head. So I was wearing a helmet, luckily, and always have done, and I've become a real helmet evangelist now, because it saved my life, I think. The helmet was destroyed, and you can just see I've got a cut on my nose, but I had, even a week ago, a big black eye. The whole of my side of my face was all smashed up. So knocked myself out, was picked off the road by an ambulance, had to go to hospital, had 2 days in hospital under observation, and had what they called a minor subarachnoid hemorrhage. So basically a tiny brain hemorrhage. So super lucky, and kind of ironic that I've spent so much of my life doing what many people would say are extremely dangerous things in extremely risky places, and have come away injury free with my fingers and toes intact and no major problems. And sunny bike ride 15 miles away from my home on a beautiful afternoon, no traffic around at all, beautiful quiet road, freewheeling down a descent, came off, and a near-death experience. So very, pretty harrowing at the time, pretty traumatic for my partner Liz, who saw it happen, saw me lying in the road with my eyes rolled back in my head, completely unconscious, unresponsive, and kind of life affirming in a way. And I guess a reminder that risk is everywhere,
life affirming in what way?
Well, I just kind of grateful that I came through it okay. Grateful for the the people that rallied around me and the friends that have been in touch since, and grateful just to be fit, alive, healthy, and I guess for my it's a brain injury, which is a pretty I'd never really, when I've thought about injury in the past, I've been corresponding recently with another British guy called Martin Ashton, who is an extraordinary character. He was an ex-professional mountain biker, a trials rider, so he did this incredible kind of stunt riding, and he's had a couple of very, very huge YouTube hits, and pro rider for many years, and he broke his back in an accident and is now paralyzed. He's getting into public speaking, so we were kind of talking about that a few weeks ago, just before I crashed, and I remember thinking at the time, like, how would I... He's so positive, such an inspiring guy. And I remember thinking, like, wow, how would an injury like that change my life? How would I deal with that kind of thing? How would I deal with being incapacitated physically so profoundly? And I'd never really thought until I crashed about brain injury. Everything is up there. Personality, your memories, your skills and knowledge, and experiences, all this stuff is in this little lump of jelly that's inside your head, and it's all you can lose it. And I hadn't really thought about that until I had such a close shave. So and even just the recovery, the first couple of days in hospital, being under observation every 2 hours, even at night, they'd wake me up, they'd check my pupils were dilating, they'd ask me my name, where I lived, and even coming home, my partner Liz kind of looking after me, and I could tell people were like watching me, like, is he okay? Is he? I'm on really strong painkillers for the first few days, wow. So I was feeling a bit kind of dopey and a bit slow, and part of me thinking, I hope things are going to improve. I hope this is not how I'm going to feel forever, And thankfully, I seem to be fine. Thankfully, everything's okay. I have all my mental faculties. I feel like I'm kind of back up to speed. I've got at the moment the only kind of lasting signs that anything had been wrong is I have tinnitus, so kind of ringing in my ears, and really only when it's quiet. So late at night, first thing in the morning, and apparently that will go away. I've had quite bad headaches. They've seemed to have gone away, so I haven't taken painkillers for 3 or 4 days now. So my first run and my first bike ride at the weekend, so feeling very grateful for both of those, and a lucky close shave.
It'll be interesting to see these type of things, and I've unfortunately been very familiar with them. It'll be very interesting to see how it molds you and shapes future direction, because it will, one way or the other, it's gonna go into there. So,
oh, for sure, yeah.
So let's.
I was going to say, interestingly, it's kind of a sad story, but a friend of mine, an acquaintance of mine, a very good travel writer called Charlie Norton, he was killed about 6 weeks ago, and again, like, what totally happened? Innocuous. He was at a wedding in I think it was in Morocco, so beautiful location, and he got up early one morning and just went for a walk, and he slipped and slid essentially down a ravine and was killed. And he's a guy who's run dozens of marathons. He's done a lot of adventure racing, some enormous, kind of adventure challenges. And a kind of mutual friend wrote a great obituary in one of the UK newspapers, The Telegraph, kind of talking about people like Charlie who were probably misportrayed as kind of adrenaline junkies and thrill seekers, and actually about risk. It was not about risk. And they talked about Michael Schumacher, the Formula One driver, who's currently in a coma, who injured again through a head injury just on a ski trip with his family on a groomed slope in a resort in the Alps. And here's a guy who'd been at the cutting edge of motor racing for 2 decades plus, and had never had a serious injury. And here he was just out skiing with his kids and wearing a helmet every. So there's kind of risk everywhere, and I often get frustrated when I'm billed as a sort of reckless thrill seeker, someone who takes kind of unconscionable levels of risk to do what I love doing. So
it's fascinating, because I've watched all of your videos, and I would send everybody to your YouTube channel, Scott Expedition, because you are meticulous in your preparation, absolutely meticulous. And I would say that going out there, even for 4 months straight, when you are doing it, is anything but reckless. You have tried to prepare for everything, and obviously you can't. You can't even prepare for anything, but you have tried to take every possible precaution you could take. And it's not like you're doing a base jump.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I think, to be accused of being an adrenaline junkie, that there is very little adrenaline. It's just a long, steady plod for weeks and weeks and weeks. So
Half a
yeah.
mile an hour isn't exactly woohoo flying high. So let's dive into that. So you're a kid, you're 18, 19, 20, somewhere in there. All of a sudden, this bug hits you. I don't know what hit you, 2x4 maybe, and said, I've got to walk to the Arctic. What were you like before this, and what lit that
How,
inner flame?
how did that happen? Well, it's it's interesting sort of looking back and trying to piece it together and figure out where this all came from. And some of it I can look back to very early childhood and just a love, as long as I can remember, a love of being outdoors, a love of adventure, a love of being kind of outside, engaged with nature. I grew up in the southwest of the UK, a county called Devon. So there's a big national park called Dartmoor, and some of my earliest memories, like happiest early memories, of being out on Dartmoor, just walking, just hill walking with my dad and my brother. So I think that's where the kind of the earliest seeds were sown. And as a kid, loved being outside. Kind of drifted through school and academia, and was never really that inspired by anything that happened in a classroom, in the four walls of a classroom. It was,
Oh yeah.
to me, I just loved being outside, loved reading. I was a voracious reader, so I loved reading about, exploration, adventure, mountaineers, yachtsmen and women, pioneers of all sorts. I was inspired, I think, jointly by not only by these sort of historic tales of adventure, but also by space travel, science fiction. As a kid, was just fascinated by that.
See, the journey to
So
the center of the earth, that got me as a kid.
yeah, so all that stuff, and then I was lucky enough to work for a guy called John Ridgway, who was my first real mentor, I guess. So I was late teens, 18, 19 at the time. It should have been what we call a gap year in the UK, so kind of between school and university. So
Yeah.
I'd actually taken like 2 years out. And in fact, I never made it to university. So I'm kind of, in a way, still on my gap year.
University of life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So John, he was, along with a teammate, a guy called Che Blythe. They were the first people to row across the Atlantic in 1966. So a wooden boat for 93 days. Epic. This is pre GPS, pre satellite phones, pre freeze dried food. So a real old school, old fashioned adventure. And I'd read a couple of his books. He'd done some extraordinary, many other journeys as well, but a real explorer. He was a British Army officer in the Special Forces. He used to box for Great Britain. He was, this kind of larger than life superhero to me as a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I applied to work for John. He was, at the time, he had what he called an adventure school. It was kind of like a outward bound type centre, but on steroids. It was extraordinary. It was right up in the northwest coast of the Scottish Highlands, so middle of nowhere, really remote location. And he ran kind of mostly for corporate clients, these leadership development, team building courses, that sort of thing, but in this fantastic location. So I applied for a job there. I worked there for a year as an instructor, taking teams outside into the mountains and out sailing, that kind of thing. And I think that's where the screw came loose. He was he was such an inspiring person to be around, and I guess I kind of went there thinking he was the sort of person that I would like to emulate somehow. And actually, what happened was that I was lucky enough to spend a year, in the company of this man who was a mentor in the best sense of the word. He was incredibly good at getting other people, me included, to completely reevaluate certainly how I saw my own potential. And I kind of went there before I knew John with this kind of almost like hero worship, like, wow, here's this incredible guy. I just want to hear more of his stories. And actually, he was the kind of person who said, well, there's nothing special about me. Here are some things I've learned along the way, but you could do it too, And it was that year really that I thought, well, this is what I want to do with my life, to go away on these big adventures, these big expeditions, but also to try and use the experience for something else and to inspire other people, to get other people thinking differently about how they viewed their own, their own aspirations, their own goals, their own dreams. So it was that year, late teens. I had a very brief army career after
Yep.
that. John had been in the army, and a lot of my other kind of role models from that period of my life were like ex-army. So I kind of assumed that the armed forces were like where you went to learn about leadership and yeah, I don't know, presumably pick up some skills to do these sorts of trips. So I saw it as like the career path that you had to follow to end up leading expeditions. And it was a great experience, but my army career was less than a year. So 11 months at Saunders, which is kind of like the UK version of West Point. So it was the Royal Military Academy. It was a great experience. I grew up a lot there, but I also realized that I didn't respond well to orders, to being told what.
I think you're used to being out there. You had a calling inside of you to be out there by yourself as your own commander.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So it was a great experience. I don't regret the experience, and I certainly matured a lot as a person. But also, I remember, when I got into the army, there was this sort of resounding, for kind of family, like, oh, Ben's finally decided what he's doing with his life. This is like, I think it represented this kind of security and a career. And when I said, actually, no, I'm leaving, there was this silence. So it was probably the first major decision I made truly for myself, and not to in some way kind of please other people or to go, So it was a big, and that was 2021. I was 21 when I left the army.
So only a couple years later, you're going for the North Pole as part of an expedition. What was Mom saying?
Yeah, my poor mother. I mean, so that first expedition was with a guy called Penn Haddo. So he was another amazing character, and another, I can just, looking back, and I can pick out sort of a few characters that were real, genuine mentors, people that I think spotted some little spark of potential in me, and people that were sort of signposts. That my life definitely changed course after coming into contact with people. So I owe Penn, John Ridgway, a few others, a real genuine gratitude. So Penn was my sort of polar mentor, and the expedition was originally going to be a big team, and Penn was leading it and guiding it, and for various reasons the rest of the team couldn't make it happen. So it ended up just being me and Penn. So it was this extraordinary apprenticeship for 8 weeks on the Arctic Ocean. We literally set off from the north coast of Russia, Siberia. I was 23 at the time, so it was just an amazing experience. One of the toughest trips I've ever done. I mean, it was a real shock. I went there thinking I was pretty fit and pretty tough and pretty experienced, and I'd spent some time in Norway and skiing around and sleeping in snow holes, and I thought I knew what to expect, but it was like being on a different planet. It was so tough. But yeah, my mum wasn't so happy, and I think it was. In some ways, a sort of fear of the unknown as well as a fear of the extreme. She knew we were heading off into the natural habitat of the polar bear. It was one of the coldest places on Earth, and we were going to be traveling on foot over the frozen surface of the sea for 8 weeks. So it was ostensibly a pretty risky thing to be doing, especially age 23. And interestingly, so Penn was a lot older than I was. He was like 40, 41 on that first trip, had a young kid, married. His wife relatively was okay with it, but his mum was the same as my mum. And Penn's theory was that mums don't think of like Ben, the man who does this for a living. They think of like 11-year-old schoolboy Ben, who's going to be
whose diapers were changed.
Exactly. A little pack lunch, a little school uniform. Yeah. So yeah, my mum was worried a lot on that first trip, and it's been really tough. I think will always be tough for mums, this kind of thing. It's in some ways she's been my biggest supporter. In other ways, she's the biggest worrier when I'm away. So
when I did my 5,000-mile ride, I let my parents know after I completed it. and my mom's like, that's such an amazing achievement, and I'm so proud of you, and thank you so much for not telling me until after it was done.
We had actually on that first expedition, we had almost no communications. There was no satellite phone. There's only one network that works over both poles called Iridium, and that was down that year. They'd gone bust.
Wow.
So we had no phone, and we've gone from having almost no communication in 2001 to now having if I wanted to from Antarctica, I could have called my mum every day. So,
Wow.
and now my mum says like the communication is too good. I can give her this kind of blow account, and she can see high res photographs of how emaciated we are, and
So
wind burns and.
let's jump into that. Let's go full blown. You at your I don't know if finest is the word so far, because I don't want to say life is just about the accomplishment. It really is, and I think you would agree about the journey wherever we're at.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
how did the idea to do the Scott expedition, which was last tried in 1912, everybody who tried it did not live to tell the tale. I'm laughing, it's not actually funny. But where'd it come from?
It's a good question. I was probably aware of. So there was two really iconic characters from that Edwardian era of the sort of golden age of exploration. So two big British names. There was Sir Ernest Shackleton and Captain Scott, Robert Falcon Scott, and they were two rivals. They were both kind of active the early part of the last century, so just over 100 years ago, and both kind of battling to try and be the first to reach the South Pole. So it was this huge goal. It's like lots of national pride at stake. It was and genuine exploration, because back then, just over a century ago, people knew more about the surface of the moon. People could see it through telescopes. They were starting to map it and chart it than they knew about the middle of Antarctica, which was essentially unexplored.
There's no Google Earth.
So there was definitely no Google Earth back then. So this was genuine exploration in every sense of the word. And so they're both, Scott and Shackleton are both still huge. They're both still household names in the UK, even though they both died, decades, a century ago. And so I was kind of aware of the story and aware of these men, even as a kid. And I was aware of them before I realised that the journey that they were both defeated by, and that Scott and his men were killed, attempting, that was still unfinished. So I blame it mostly on a guy called Tony Hale, a really good friend of mine. He's now living in New York, so not far from you. And he and I got together. Must be 12 years ago. 13 years ago nearly, long time ago. And I'd just done my first couple of expeditions, and he wanted to do something in Antarctica. And we started kind of bouncing ideas around, and I guess it kind of dawned on us both about the same kind of time, about 12 years ago, that this journey was still hanging out there, still hadn't been done. And this was one of the most audacious journeys of that Edwardian golden age of exploration, and it still hadn't been done. And the more I thought about that, the more it just seemed, the more I couldn't figure it out, and the more it became an obsession. It was as if the marathon record had been set in 1912, and no one had been able to break it. It was like the high watermark of human endeavor, just in sheer athletic endurance terms. The Scott and his men, the final three that died, had covered 1,600 miles on foot, and no one had come close to that ever since. Even though they were so woefully ill-clothed, ill-equipped, ill-fed, ill-prepared, ill-trained, they still achieved something.
They didn't have the food we have today, the technology, the gear, the clothing,
I often
anything.
say something. And Taka, my teammate, and I often talked about what it must have been like. And one of the things there were two things that really blew us away. One was that they didn't even have zippers on their jacket because they hadn't been invented yet.
Buttons.
They just had like buttons. And the other one was and just something we took for granted every day was vacuum flasks or thermos flasks. So we would make every morning in the tent. We would melt snow, boil water, and make 2 liters of each of hot energy drink to have throughout the day. So we would stop every 90 minutes to eat and drink. And again, they hadn't been invented, so they just couldn't drink during the day. So they would have been massively dehydrated. They would, in fact, both Scott and Shackleton's diaries, you read about them stopping after several hours, during the day, to kind of put the tent up and light the stove and melt snow to make tea, to have a cup of tea, which is about as English as it gets. So they would have been, totally dehydrated, so to me, the fact that no one had finished this journey when they came so close, 100 years ago, and the fact that every subsequent Antarctic expedition had been kind of below the bar that these guys set. That to me just seemed extraordinary. So it became not far off an obsession really for probably nearly 10 years, trying to get down there and trying to somehow finish this journey.
Now, you knew that your, for lack of a word, hero idols had not succeeded in doing it. They died. How did you reconcile that with your head, or the fear, or the, though they died trying, I know I can do this?
Well, in some ways, it was a very different undertaking. Even though we were trying to cover exactly the same routes on foot, the same distance, starting things at the same point. There's a kind of a safety net nowadays that of course didn't exist 100 years ago. We had satellite phones, we've got GPS, we've got communication 24/7, and we have, in theory, aircraft on standby if we need assistance or rescue. So I kind of went down there thinking, well, it's so much safer than it was a century ago, like that. And on reflection, I think even though I've been doing this.
This is a Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope. I can see it.
Yeah. On reflection, I think I'd spent so long convincing, everyone around me, friends, family, sponsors, media, that this was a relatively safe thing to be undertaking, nowadays, given 21st century technology. And definitely compared to the solo, the North Pole trips out in the past, where there are polar bears, you're traveling over the sea, it's melting, Antarctica's land, we're skiing over continent, there are no bears. It's
no killer penguins.
So I spent so long kind of building a case for how safe this trip was.
Yeah.
That I think actually I had kind of lulled myself into a slightly false sense of security, and even though we have satellite phones, even though there are aircraft that can reach us, we were never really out of reach. I mean, you talked about the Beardmore, this big glacier that we climbed up. That would have been very difficult to land an aircraft. I mean, impossible to land aircraft on. So there we would have been difficult to reach if we'd had an accident. But technically, we were never out of range, out of reach of being picked up if something went wrong. But having said that, this place is vast. The continent that we're on is twice the size of Australia. It's the same size as China and India put together, and we're walking very slowly on one side, and the airplane, if we need rescuing, the kind of ambulance essentially is on the far side of this continent. I'd need to actually work it out, but it would be 1,800 miles away from us in a straight line. And this is a little plane with skis and propellers, and it goes very slowly. And it needs good weather. And the weather is really that good in Antarctica. So actually we were still very isolated a lot of the time, and we were reliant on if we did need support or rescue, God forbid, then we would need good weather conditions. The plane could still take days to reach us rather than hours. So it's a big place, and I think looking back, I'd probably slightly downplayed the element of risk.
Talking about that, in preparation, I've been watching your videos, and I can't tell what videos were done as kind of promoting your sponsors. Like there's one where you're pulling a Land Rover, which maybe that was regular part of your training. I don't know. It was cool. and what an awesome sponsor and Land Rover to have. But you were doing some pretty special physical training, because, I mean, carrying a 440-pound sled, this is like CrossFit on steroids.
Yeah, to me, I mean, that was always part of the appeal. A big part of the appeal. We weren't trying to find out where the South Pole was. That's been done. So we weren't going down there kind of exploring in the old-fashioned geographic sense. But to me, the element of exploration was the fact that we were trying to cover more distance than anyone had ever covered under their own human motive power in the toughest place on earth, arguably. We were, as I said, 69 marathons back to back, pulling sleds 440 pounds each at the start. So that's two fat guys in a bathtub for nearly 70
on sticky snow. This isn't ice that you slide across. No glide.
Minus 40 exactly. So it was, to me, it was like the ultimate sort of ultra marathon, but and it's a challenging thing to train for, because there was no real precedent. No one had ever covered that distance before, putting that on a weight. So we were trying to do something that was that had never been done, and in many ways was certainly sort of physiologically was a step into the unknown when it came to how to train, nutrition, lots of different factors. So to me that was where the exploration came in.
What was the
and that was
mental
a big part
aspect of training like, or was there?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, the most important thing was experience, and this was my 11th big expedition. I mean, it was the biggest by far, but I certainly wasn't new to pulling a sledge or to operating those sorts of conditions. And the same with Tarka, my teammate. He lives in the Alps in France. He spent a lot of time in Patagonia, doing big ice cap crossings. So he's both he and I knew what to expect in terms of conditions. So that experience was vital. And I think at the same time, knowing that we had prepared as well as we could was really crucial. So the sort of, you mentioned the kind of attention to detail when it came to the equipment and the clothing and the food, and we were obsessive about that. And there was a lot of work went into kind of perfecting all of that.
Yeah, I remember from my journey shedding gear, shedding more gear. And there's a video of your teammate and you're shaking your head going, no, what's he doing? As he's drilling his toothbrush, and I so get it. He wanted the full length handle experience.
Yeah, we thought nearly 4 months. I'd sawn off my toothbrush. I was a little stubby, kind of, and he was going for the full length handle, but was trying to match the weight of my toothbrush. So yeah, it got pretty out of hand at times. But I think knowing that you'd gone to such extreme lengths to get ready was really important. Knowing that we hadn't cut any corners was really vital. So I still, looking back, still believe that we could not have been better prepared, and I'm quite proud of that. There was a lot of work.
One of the videos I saw looked like what I would call, or actually my wife is the one who said it, Jedi training, where you're basically hooded and you're having to move together in unison. And I was thinking, this is almost a telepathic experience. You're going to have to be able to communicate. I mean, in a blowing winds whiteout, you're certainly not having a talk with each other.
Yeah, we did some really interesting exercises, and a lot of it was trying to figure out how we. So it's a really high pressure environment as a team of two, performing under that much kind of self-imposed pressure in such an extreme climate. And Tark and I both experienced athletes, if you will, adventurers, explorers, whatever you want to call us. So we both had a lot of experience. We've known each other for more than 10 years, so good friends. So there's a lot of mutual respect and trust, which was really important. But the one thing that we thought might be a challenge was that we were both used to leading things, and both used to being decision makers. We'd both done some big solo projects as well.
Yeah.
So we were concerned that the one potential friction point might be kind of decision making under pressure, that sort of thing. Who's in charge? Who ultimately has the final word? So a lot of the sort of psychological preparation training was geared around that, and I guess kind of building on the sort of trust and the quality of communication between us. So there were some very interesting exercises, and I think it worked. We got on brilliantly. We never fought. We never really argued. We had the occasional disagreement, but we're still good friends, and we got on extraordinarily well for nearly 4 months.
Now, from what I've seen, and I don't know what happened in this, originally you were training with 3 people, and it ended up being the 2 of you, and I have to think that was one heck of an oh crap moment, whatever happened, and a big decision of what do we do. If you can share what happened and what were you and Tark thinking at that point about this?
Well, the team changed a lot over the space of about 3 years. So originally it was going to be three of us, me, 2 other guys called Martin and Al, and the expedition was postponed. We just, for various reasons, we didn't have the money, we didn't have the right conditions in Antarctica, the right weather window, so it kept being postponed. And Al, but all really good friends of mine. So Al basically has a young family. His wife had been promoted. She was working harder and harder, and I think he couldn't quite justify taking essentially 5 months out from home life, nearly 4 months in Antarctica, and then there's travel to and from, and there's waiting for weather windows, that kind of thing. So it was like a 5 months away from home, and I guess Al just couldn't really justify that. And then Martin had an old injury, a climbing injury, and just hadn't quite cleared up, and so they're both two of my closest friends, and we've both been working towards this project as a trio for a long time. And yeah, Tarka was kind of in the wings as like the sort of the reserve, if one of these guys couldn't make it. So
reserve Superman.
So the whole thing kind of changed profoundly, and it went from being a 3 to a 2. Looking back, I think it's funny how these things work out, but I think actually it was a brilliant combination. Tarka was just a fantastic teammate. So yeah, looking back, it all kind of worked out for the best in a weird way, but really challenging when for months, years, you've been working that closely with friends, to try and make this dream happen, and then for whatever reason they can't join you. So really tough, So some of the toughest decisions happened before we even got to Antarctica.
And were you at, when it turned out that they couldn't work on this project, was there a point at which you're going, maybe I'm not supposed to do this?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I guess there were so many setbacks. This expedition had been a dream really for about 10 years. So, or a goal for 10 years, probably a dream for more than that, but a definite goal for about a decade. And looking back, 10 years ago, I was pretty naive. I thought it might take a year or two at the most. Money to get some experience and little did I realize quite how complex. Logistically, it was a very, very complex project as well. So pretty pioneering in terms of how we got down there and how we created a long enough time window in Antarctica to do this journey. So really complex project, and looking back, I was pretty naive about just what it would take to get this thing off the ground.
So let's jump into a little bit of logistics, and then I want to take us through briefly on this journey. I watched you guys packing up in one of the videos, and if I'm correct, it's something like 2 million calories you'd be carrying between the two of you, and that's it.
Yeah, it was a lot of food. We had 110 days of food and fuel. The fuel is just for a stove, so we can melt snow to get water to rehydrate the food to make hot drinks. So everything, in a strange way, it's like being an astronaut. You're dragging this life support system behind you in an environment that is completely sterile. The only living things in Antarctica come out of the sea, really. So the only natural indigenous wildlife is around the coastline, and the interior of this place is completely lifeless, big white desert. So we were pulling everything that we would need for nearly 4 months.
And what were you eating?
Food was pretty boring. There wasn't much variety. So breakfast was in a bag, so it's like a sort of freeze-dried granola type thing, but with it was made with powdered cream, like double cream. So just for extra calories. So we had that, was in a bag, and we just make it with hot water and eat it out of the bag. We'd wash it down with half a litre, about a pint of an energy drink, so a carb drink, and another sort of pint of kind of protein shake sort of thing. Yep. A few pills, supplements. We obviously didn't eat anything fresh, no fruit or vegetables or anything fresh for nearly 4 months. So we just
no farmers market.
No, definitely not. No. And funny enough, some of the most vivid food fantasies were for kind of leafy salads and vegetables, and after a while. So we just had some supplements, so kind of multivitamins and fish oils and that kind of thing to stay healthy. And then we'd make our drinks for the day, and then we'd set off. And we didn't really have lunch, but we would stop every hour and a half during the day to have some food and some drink. So kind of hot energy drink, and we had some really good bars that were sort of cold pressed, quite high in fat. So normally from sort of cashew butter and almond butter, that sort of thing, and some dried fruit. And we had a bit of some more nuts, bit of like dark chocolate, bit of dried meats, that just we'd bought in Chile on the way down. All pretty high calorie stuff, and then in the evening, as soon as you put the tent up, we'd have a like a recovery drink, so sort of carb and protein drink, a few different snacky things. So there's a British company that makes energy bars using like 9 different types of seeds. So that we had these bars, and what else? I'm trying to think, a few other snacky things, maybe some more chocolate, and then a kind of main meal again freeze dried in a bag at the end of the day. So that was, I think we had 5 or 6 different varieties of meal. So that was the one real thing that changed, and it became a huge like, oh, what's for dinner this evening? And we had a lot of curries that was quite English, like chicken curry and beef stew and lamb
food. What was it like? So you get into, we're kind of jumping ahead, and I actually want to jump back in a second once we get off the food topic to starting, but you'd come into camp, I put that in quotes, at night, which means that you've got your energy is down, you've stopped, now you got to bring your energy up, shift gears, set up camp, get the fire going, so to speak, and make dinner, where at times, I know you couldn't have wanted anything more than to just, particularly if you're cold, collapse.
Yep.
And so that must have been both a huge amount of discipline to do that, and what I experienced is if you neglect a small detail saying I'm too tired to do that, it'll always catch up with you. How'd you get the boost to do that every day?
Yeah, good question. In some ways, I think we almost always, I can't think of a day when we didn't look forward to getting into the tent. So it was kind of relief at the end of the day to lie down, get in a sleeping bag, and to be sheltered out of the wind. So it was always warmer in the tent because obviously you're out of the wind. It's 24-hour daylight when we're down there. So we would, paradoxically, we were actually skiing at night in our local time zone. So the sun was lowest when we were skiing, and highest when we put our tent up. So
that
even
for wind or what was the strategy?
It was for a few different reasons. So it was originally because we wanted to stay on UK time. So it made things like blog posts and communication just made that simple.
Yeah.
You can technically in Antarctica at that time of year, the sun doesn't set. So you can just pick your own time zone. It doesn't. Just whatever's convenient. So we decided to stay. Yeah, so we started to kind of stay on UK time. So also there wouldn't be jet lag when we started and that kind of thing because we were starting and finishing on the New Zealand side of Antarctica, which is 12 hours different to the UK. So a big difference. So we didn't want to have to deal with jet lag and those things. And we also our theory, and I'm pretty sure that Scott and Jacqueline both did the same thing. Our theory was that with the sun being highest in our night, when we put the tent up, you'd actually get the most warmth when you're lying in the tent in the sleep bag, and that's generally how it was. So it was always a kind of relief to get into the tent and get out of the wind and to be sort of relatively comfortable, and to eat and drink and kind of refuel and try and get some rest. But also, we got to the point where it was just routine. I mean, every day was routine. It just became habit, and someone else asked me, and I realized recently I was struggling to answer. Someone asked me how we sort of motivate ourselves to kind of get up every day and I was struggling with the answer, and I realized after a while that it was habits basically. It was routine, and we just kind of drilled ourselves
to anything.
And exactly, and it's amazing how quickly you get used to it. And Tark and I had both trained in Greenland the summer before we left for Antarctica, so 4 or 5 months before we left, using exactly the same tent, exactly the same gear, same clothing, same food, everything. So we already had the routine. We already knew. We'd already rehearsed, dress rehearsal basically. So it was, in some ways, it was just habit, and it was practice, and it was routine, and we could do it. We could put the tent up. Even, you're wearing mittens, in a storm, in the wind, But it got to the point where we could do that almost without talking. We just had our own roles, and one of us would collect the snow that we were going to melt to get drink water. The other one would put snow around the edge of the tent. There's a sort of big flap of fabric around the outside, just to sort of anchor the tent down. So we just each of us had a role, and as soon as we got in the tent, every day we'd alternate. So one person would lie on one side, one would lie on the other, and whoever was lying on the left-hand side of the tent was the chef, and all the chef has to do is work the stove and melt snow. That was it, because the meals are in bags, so you don't have to do anything with ingredients or like that. But we would alternate every other day. So we both, we just had set roles, routines, and just a habit, and that's kind of how we got through it, really.
what were you thinking as you're out there? And I can't even imagine a 440-pound sled at the start. And there are days you're going half a mile an hour. What's going on upstairs?
Well, I think, and I think this was a lesson that I'd taken from previous expeditions, that you know, when things are tough, and when it seems like, you know, the odds are against you, and everything's just harder than you imagined it was going to be, there's a tendency for the sort of ultimate goal to start seeming so far away, so far-fetched, that it starts to seem beyond your grasp. And I guess from experience now, I know that the best way to deal with that is just to break things down into like the smallest possible next step. And especially when you're in an environment where a lot of factors are outside your control, which in the polar regions, you know, the outside factors can be life-threatening. You know, the weather, the severity of the conditions, environment is you know, it's very humbling, because it's you know, normally if it's cold, you can just turn the heating up, or you can go inside, or you can, yeah. There, it's the weather can be life-threatening when it's bad. So and it's totally outside your control. So in a way, we had to condition ourselves to not worry too much about, like, not expend too much mental energy on things that we can't actually affect, things that we can't change, and you learn to kind of focus everything you have on things that you can do, which generally is to keep moving in a certain direction. And we just would set the smallest possible goals. So I would tend to think, when we were doing, as you said, like half a mile an hour at the start, we did, I think our worst day was about 5 kilometers, or whatever it is, like, yeah, 3 miles. And you've still got 1,700 and something miles ahead of you. And then it just seems hopeless. You're like, well, we've only got 100 days through. How is this going to... So there were days like that when you'd have to kind of block it out of your mind and just think, well, actually, I believe things will improve. I believe we'll get faster. The weather will, you know, we're traveling into the spring and the summer, so it should get warmer. The sledge gets lighter every day, so we should, in theory, get faster. So you have to kind of trust that things will get better, and then just focus everything on what you can do and what you can change, which in our experience was just moving in the right direction, putting one foot in front of the other, and setting tiny goals. I'd say, well, all I'm going to do is think as far ahead as the next break. Yeah, an hour and a half time, and then I'll worry about the rest of it. So just tactics like that, and it helped enormously having a teammate and having a friend and you know, a kind of partner that really trusted, really got on with, and we both went through enormous highs and lows, you know, mentally, and they never coincided. So when one of us was down, the other one was always there to pull us through it, and the reverse was true. So that teamwork and that partnership was a really crucial element of it, for sure.
So going from teamwork, from putting one step in front of the other, from having faith, believing it's going to work out, you get on the Beardmore Glacier, and this thing could literally swallow you whole. And let me go there. That's a question that Jessica has on my list. Did you miss your dog?
So I'm not sure. There may even be someone at the door. Can I just? Are we able to pause it? I'm so sorry.
I've got the time marked here, so go for it.
I'm so sorry, Mark. But let me just check. 2 seconds. I'm so sorry. I've got noise cancelling headphones on, so I didn't ever knock the door, but no one there. I think she was fast asleep, heard the wind or something. So sorry about that.
That's okay, but it's a great place to pick back up. Which is, I've watched the videos, particularly you going up this hill, doing hill repeats, and you are so, and your dog is there when you're packing. You guys are like a team. So I'm wondering, is it her? And I was wondering if you're missing her out on your journey.
Yeah, so yeah, my dog is a she, it's Molly. She is nearly 6 now. She's looking at me. She's a Labradoodle, so she's not really. I often think she should be a husky or something, but she's a mongrel.
That's really what Jessica was saying. She's like, I pictured him with a husky.
But yeah, she's been a very, very loyal companion. A lot of training miles together for sure. So yeah, she stayed with my mum when I was away. So that was good. And yeah, I got the warmest welcome you can imagine when I got home again after nearly 5 months. So yeah, I miss her a lot. Funnily enough, Tarka has a dog as well called Boogie, a rescue dog that he and his wife took in. So we were both huge dog lovers, and that was the like recurring theme actually of conversation, was like missing our dogs and wondering what they were doing when we're in Antarctica. We'd often wonder how they would have handled it, if they were with us on the trip.
My dog, one of the dogs I had her for almost 17 years, was a coyote mix. And
Wow.
so she would go out. Actually, at the time, I had a coyote mix, and I also had some sort of mongrel shepherd. And both of them would go out when I'd be up at 11, 12,000 feet up above timberline. They'd be out partying.
Well, Molly's been to the Alps with me training. She loves the snow, so yeah, she's an outdoor adventure dog for sure.
So jumping into that's a bad way to say it, jumping into the Beardmore Glacier.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. 120, 125 miles across, crevasses 200 feet deep. It sounds like you did fall into it, like at least up to chest high on occasion. What was that like?
Oof. Well, the Beardmore glacier and glacier is like a tomato, like glacier glacier. So I'll say glacier. Was It was, in some ways, it was like my nemesis. It was the one bit of the journey that I was genuinely quite scared about, because it was for me it was a sort of unknown quantity. I'd never. It's one of the biggest glaciers in the world. I didn't have that much experience of glacier travel in the genuine sense. Tarka did a lot, and that's one of the reasons that he'd always been kind of on the short list for potential teammates. And we actually kind of had an agreement where he was in charge. We thought it'd take about a week to get up this thing, and probably 5-6 days to get down it on the way home again. So Tarka was. The deal was that I would defer to his decision making and his choice of route going up and down the glacier, because in fact, Tark and I are the only living people to have travelled both ways, to have gone up and down this glacier.
And
So
it's 7,200 feet up. It's not
it's huge.
just
It's huge.
a flat glacier. This is a
Exactly.
mountain.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a big bit of ice, and there's very little in the way of contemporary data when it comes to choosing a route. So that very little. There's nothing really when it comes to GPS waypoints or paths or tracks or trails up this thing. So we were kind of making it up as we went along, and we had a rough idea of where Scott and Shackleton would have been. But beyond that, there's been one expedition, I think 5-6 years ago, who went up it one way. So we had their waypoints, but they weren't sure that they'd chosen the best route either. So we were kind of winging it on this glacier, and Tarka was in charge, and it was the one bit of the journey that I was kind of secretly dreading, because we were most at risk, really. It's heavily crevassed, so there was huge cracks in the glacial ice that you certainly don't want to fall through. And Henry Worsley, who's the guy that led the only recent expedition up Beardmore one way, he said that when they were on it, his biggest fear wasn't falling into some sort of gaping chasm. It was actually putting a foot into a hole, like twisting your ankle or tearing a ligament in your knee, or some kind of injury that would have scuppered the whole plan. And the same is true for us, actually, because it's a really hazardous environment to be hanging out in, let alone trying to cover distance for a week or so. But it was also interesting. I'd expected to be, before we got to it.
Yeah.
I was really scared of it, and I was expecting it to be just this petrifying experience. And actually, when we arrived there, it's a stunning, stunning place. And I felt
Blue ice, if I'm correct.
yeah, most of it's blue ice. So it's so windy year round on this glacier that the snow doesn't settle. So instead, you have this polished blue ice. It's very alien kind of environment. This sort of ripple, rock hard, steel hard surface, very slippery. So we switched from using skis to using crampons, these kind of spikes on our boots. Something we'd trained for in Greenland, and something we were expecting and anticipating. But again, you're kind of using gear in a way it's not really designed for. Like crampons aren't really designed for covering hundreds of miles on foot. Like no one does that in their right mind.
That would explain the broken crampons on the way back.
Exactly.
Whoops.
So Henry, this friend of mine that had been up it a few years ago, they used kind of lightweight aluminium crampons and had real problems with those. So he said, yeah, take like the beefiest steel crampons you can find. But we were still doing stuff with them that they're not really designed to do. So for me, there was this kind of deep fear and deep apprehension. Like, how were we going to deal with this place? It was to me, it was the biggest obstacle we'd have to cross getting to and from the South Pole. And the one thing I hadn't expected was the sort of beauty of it. Because we'd spent, I think it took us 40 odd days to get to the Beardmore Glacier from the coast on the way out. And that's 40 days of nothing, flat, white, 360-degree horizon, nothing, no landmarks, no points, and then suddenly you get to this giant mountain range, and the Beardmore spans the Transantarctic Mountains, which are, huge. One of the most remote mountain ranges in the world, and largely unexplored, largely unclimbed, and for the most part, really impressive, really beautiful mountain range. So I hadn't really expected to be that. I just thought it was going to be terrifying, and actually it was beautiful.
There's something really special about the fact that when you go through your fear, you get to that point of highest fear, and you push through that all of a sudden there's such incredible beauty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being willing to sort of to face up to that fear as well, because my overwhelming feeling before we got there was just terror. Like, how am I going to deal with this place? And when we arrived there, actually, we were just greeted by this extraordinary view. You climb up a feature called the Gateway, which was discovered by Sir Ernest Shackleton. You can count on both hands the number of people that have ever travelled up that feature. So there's this feeling of real privilege of being there and travelling past landmarks. There's the Mount Hope, which Shackleton named, and he climbed Mount Hope to see the route up the Beardmore for the first time. So it was like stepping into this sort of storybook that I was so familiar to me, and seeing places that so many people have read about, but so few have ever seen with their own eyes. So there was an extraordinary feeling of privilege and excitement at kind of being there. And then this amazing view from the top of the Gateway across to the sort of mouth of the glacier, and it's just mind-blowing view. So one of my most treasured memories from the whole trip was the base of the Beardmore Glacier, and the one day that I thought was going to be the most terrifying, the low point of the whole trip, actually is kind of seared into my mind as one of the most beautiful and one of the most majestic. So it's funny how these things work out.
I love it. So let's fast forward in the trip as you're winding down time-wise. You're on the way back. Your load is getting lighter. Life should be good at this point, and crap hits the fan.
Yeah, big time. So I always knew that this journey, that completing this journey, was going to mean giving it 100% the whole time we were down there, and being kind of, in terms of human performance, being like right at the limit, right at the red line of what was humanly possible. And for years I've been sort of writing about and talking about the fact that this journey was going to be genuinely at the cutting edge of human endurance. And again, I hadn't really
you weren't reading your own words
on how uncomfortable that was going to be. 4 months.
Probably a good thing you didn't read your own words.
Yeah. So the reality of that was we both lost a lot of weight, and we knew that was going to happen. We knew that there's this really high metabolic demand. We knew that just staying alive in that sort of cold demands more calories, let alone covering 69 marathons. So we were eating about 6,000 calories a day, but we were probably burning nearer 8,000 or 9,000 a day. So we're always in deficit. We deliberately fattened up. So I put on 12 kilos, so I don't know, like 25 pounds plus before I left. And I lost way more than that when I was out there. So I came back just emaciated. So we knew, we kind of knew that would happen. and our strategy was to not only start out like fat and overfed with kind of reserves, but to leave, because we were traveling to the pole and then back again along exactly the same route. So we planned to leave a number of depots of literally like little caches of food and fuel buried in the snow, marked with GPS, and then we just stick a flag in the snow. So we had this series of 10 depots on the way to the pole. And because no one had finished this journey, there was no real data to go on. So a lot of it was just guesswork in terms of the planning and the strategy. And we'd left the last depot quite a long way from the pole, thinking that we'd be midsummer, the weather should be great. We've got this psychological, high point of turning around at the South Pole. We've broken the back of this journey. We're heading home again. In theory, the sledges should be almost empty. They'll be light. It's flat. You're on this high Antarctic plateau. When we turned at the pole, we thought we'd have a tailwind because we'd been going into the wind almost every day for 2 months by that stage. So we were kind of gambling on a few factors, and we thought things would be way easier than they were. And we did a long day to reach the pole and turn around. We didn't want to stay at the pole or close to the pole because we thought it would be a distraction. There's a big science base there now. There's an airstrip. There are planes going in and out. It would be a tempting place to quit. So we wanted to kind of turn around the pole and get away again
Touch and go,
exactly. So and to do that in one day, in a big day. So we did this big day, turn around the pole, and then slept for a couple of hours, and then did another day. So we were kind of tired from that, and then things started to turn against us. We were probably physically more run down than we'd really appreciated by that point. So we covered 35 plus marathons. We were at altitude. The pole itself is 10,000 feet above sea level, so it's high enough to make things harder. We were expecting to have perfect conditions and to be sort of racing with this wind behind us to reach the first of the depot or the last of the depot that we'd laid on the way out. And in fact, things just turned again. So we had really bad weather. We were exhausted. It was very cold, very windy. So we started running low on food. And we always knew we'd be cutting things fine. That was always the strategy. We just had no capacity to be pulling lots of spare reserves with us. So we were kind of at the limit anyway. And we realized after a while that we weren't traveling fast enough. We weren't covering enough distance to reach this first depot before we ran out of food. So for a little while, we halved our rations, and we were eating 3,000 calories a day and burning 9,000. So just finishing every day, just dangerously exhausted, hypoglycemic. You become very susceptible to cold injury, hypothermia, frostbite, that sort of things. So just taking a lot of risk, running very, very low on reserves. And we finally got to the point, we had some really bad weather, big storms, where we were, and I forget the exact distance, with 30-something miles from the depot. We had about half a day's food left. We'd set out with the ambition of trying to get there. We thought if we can do a big enough day, we can reach it. But Tarka had been hypothermic, the 24 hours before, physically in a very dangerous state. And we were halfway through the day, and Tarka said to me, "Look, I don't feel." His exact words, he said, "I can feel my legs going," which was like Tarka speak for I'm not 100%. And I was feeling exhausted, as I was definitely on the limit. And I just had this sort of realization of like, you know what, we're right on the edge here, and if we both become hypothermic, then we're screwed. We're in
and the
real
brain gets shot. You got
totally
a brain and you can't make a good decision.
Absolutely. And I thought, you know what, while I am still making good decisions, I need to really think about how much risk I'm willing to take on here. And ultimately it was down to me. This was my decision to be out there. He was a friend of mine who invited to join me on this journey. And I had this sort of realization of I'd gone to Antarctica to be tested and challenged, and the South Pole itself had been this weird anticlimax because it was always the halfway point, and we just turned around. It was a long, hard day. It was cold and windy at the pole. It wasn't much fun, so we just turned around and got away again. And I remember thinking like that wasn't really what I expected it to be in terms of a sort of high point of the journey. But looking back, the crux was a week after the pole when we were running almost out of food, very bad weather, realizing we're not going to make this first depot. We're going to be out of fuel, basically, physically at our lowest ebb. in the coldest place on earth. I basically made the decision to stop there and then to put the tent up, to put our survival first, essentially, and to call for some help. So we had some food and fuel flown out to us at great expense. So that chewed up all of our kind of contingency budget. And it was in some ways really frustrating because we were so close to completing this journey with zero outside assistance, which was kind of my ultimate dream, really. And a lot of experts were saying was impossible. If you look at Scott or Shackleton or Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian who got there first, they all had enormous support teams, and they all had teams that were sort of pre-positioning their depots of fuel. So to the idea that two guys could start out pulling everything would have been unthinkable to Scott or Shackleton. So in some ways, we were only able to do that because of the modern day technology. So we had, carbon fiber sledges and ski poles and all that kind of stuff. But in other ways, the technology enabled us to push ourselves a lot harder. So we were pulling more than twice as much weight than per person than Scotsmen were. So as athletes, I don't think anyone had ever pushed themselves that hard before, and it kind of hit us high on the Antarctic plateau, out of food, hypothermic, exhausted, and having to call for some assistance. So it was a really tough call because it kind of compromised the style in which we wanted to do it. But ultimately, looking back, one of my proudest decisions, I think, because it was I kind of realized that the buck stops with me, and I have to do something here.
So it's not something you look back on and regret. It was you're here.
Exactly. Yeah, and of course, Captain Scott died in Antarctica. Shackleton, famously brought all of his men home alive, and someone very kindly, people could leave comments on the blog around that, and someone very kindly said, you know what, this reminds me of the decision Shackleton made on his Nimrod expedition, which was before Scott, when he turned around 95 miles short of the pole because he realized he was running out of food, and they couldn't have called for help back then. So strangely, even though one of the most frustrating things that's ever happened to me, one of my proudest decisions for sure.
I love it. So we've got to wrap things up shortly here. I want to jump into what people can learn from this experience, and I love your TED talk that you gave now many years ago, relatively speaking, went viral, 1.5 million hits, talking about getting outdoors again. So what are 3 key takeaway pieces of advice you'd give people based on your life?
Oof! Wow.
Just
one is about, and people often ask about the sort of physicality of it. How do you eat? What do you train? How do you, have you had any injuries? Do you have any frostbite? Have you got your fingers and toes? But the looking back, 12 plus years of big expeditions, 2% of my life spent on skis, living in a tent either north of the Arctic Circle or south of Antarctica. So a lot of time doing this stuff. I think that the part of myself that I've stretched and tested more than anything physical is my sense of self-belief. And there have been many moments where it's felt like everyone around me is doubting whether what I'm trying to achieve is actually possible. And many moments where my own self-doubt and my own fear has been the biggest obstacle that I've had to overcome. And my theory now, after many years of doing this stuff, is that self-belief is a bit like a muscle, and it kind of responds to stimulus, and that stimulus is adventure, is risk, is trying new things, is spending time outside your comfort zone, and I think self-belief is the most important ingredient in success in any field, and I don't mean self-belief in a kind of egotistical, like, check out how many miles I've skied today kind of thing. I mean self-belief to be the belief that tomorrow can be better than today, and that I have the capacity to help make that happen somehow. So that, to me, that's a healthy view of self-belief. And so self-belief, in my experience, the more time you spend outside your comfort zone, the more time you spend taking on things that you're not sure you're capable of achieving, that you haven't done before, that might seem impossible at times, the stronger it gets. And it's not linked to success or failure, because in 11 big expeditions now, none of them have been successful in every respect. Like I've never checked every box that I wanted to check on every expedition. So I've always set my sights so high that I've never been able to like ultimately achieve. But it's only in doing that and kind of failing over and over again that I've got to where I have, which is genuinely kind of raising the bar in the peculiar niche that I'm passionate about. So yeah, self-belief responds to that kind of risk taking and that adventure, and the reverse is true. I think if you just do what you know how to do, and if you just do what you've always done and what you're comfortable doing, then your self-belief is like a muscle that's never used. It's like a hamstring. If you spend all day sat down and then you drive home and you get home and you sit down, your hamstring is kind of relaxed in that shortened position, and it gets used to that. And self-belief's the same. So that's number one. Number two is, what would number two be? One of the biggest lessons of this trip, of Antarctica, is that there was a definite finish line at the end of it. There was there's a crack in the ice between the ice of the Ross Ice Shelf and the shore of Ross Island. So there was this definite finish line, and that would have been the same finish line for Shackleton, for Captain Scott, and it took Tarka and me 108 days of severe challenge. I mean, it's so much so that it's really impossible to do it justice by trying to explain like how tough it was at times. And I think I've actually blocked most of it out of my mind, like how hard it was. But it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And of course, before that, 10 years worth of work, really, of training and preparation, fundraising. Yeah, I raised and spent probably $5 million, in kind of getting to this point. So much sacrifice, so much work, so much dedication, so much effort to get to that one point, to step across that line. And when we stepped across it, nothing happened.
Oh no.
Nothing changed. And I'm not sure what I was expecting, but I think in life we often sort of set things up so that success is a finish line in the future. That if we sacrifice enough and are dedicated enough and work hard enough, then we might get there one day. And I think the biggest lesson of this giant journey and this giant challenge was that fulfillment and success and happiness, they're not what happens at the end of the journey. They're the journey itself. It's kind of how you play the game. It's not what happens at the end. And I kind of knew that, of course, academically, but it was a huge reminder, stepping across this finish line at the end of this momentous journey, huge. And it was sort of strangely anti-climatic. Nothing happened. We were just
sort of
exhausted.
like getting to the South Pole, very anticlimactic. Exactly. Okay, we're here.
But of course, the huge lesson is, and it's a giant cliche, that it's the journey, not the destination. But that was really borne out by this whole experience. That success, fulfillment, they're not. It's how you play the game. It's not what happens at the end of the journey. So that's one of the biggest. What's the last? Oh, I need to give you a third one. Wow.
No pressure.
I think just also the importance of like not taking it all too seriously. We were down there to have some fun and kind of keeping that sense of humor and being able to kind of laugh at ourselves even when things seemed totally hopeless and we were really struggling and suffering. To keep that kind of humility and that sense of humor and to kind of look after each other and have some fun was really important. So ultimately, it was an adventure, and I think that's what life should be about.
The last question I have, which segues perfectly with that, what brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Oh wow, greatest happiness. I would say it's adventure, but adventure doesn't have to be going to Antarctica or the North Pole or the middle of it. I've had as much fun on adventures walking my dog in the bit of woodland, a mile away from my house. That's an adventure. So to me, it's kind of getting outdoors, enjoying nature, disconnecting from devices, and I'm as guilty as anyone of spending a lot of time in front of a screen and a keyboard, But I think, getting outside, getting outdoors, just appreciating this fantastic world that we live in, engaging with nature, engaging with other people, doing fun things. For me, that's where it's at.
So you kick people outside.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So on that note, where can people go to find out more?
I'm online. BenSaunders.com is my kind of fairly neglected website. I have a blog. I am long overdue blog post. The expedition is all online. So scottexpedition.com. You can go back and reread blog posts from 108 days in Antarctica. We're blogging every day. So I'm quite proud of the writing from that trip. I'm not really a photographer. I'm not really a filmmaker. I'm not artistic or musical, but I've always loved words. I've always loved writing. So I'm quite proud. At some point there will be a book from this expedition, but it hasn't happened yet. So right now, blog posts are all online, scottexpedition.com. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Polar Ben on both of those. They're probably where I'm most active. Facebook as well, all Polar Ben.
Beautiful. And I'm almost afraid to ask, anything coming up next?
What's next? Well, at the moment I'm kind of busy telling a story. So doing a lot of speaking. I'm slowly writing a book, and just kind of enjoying being back home, really. There's a loose plan coming together for a return to Antarctica, but very different. So with a big team, a lot of young people, and it's with a big UK charity. But I can't say more than that. But that would be end of 2016. So really a really fun project.
Well, thank you so much, Ben. This has been a true honor and a joy, and it makes me want to get out and play, and I can see Jessica going, let's move north. I can see it coming now. She's going to go, you want warmth? You want desert? Let's go play in the Arctic, and she'll probably win. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get outside, no matter where that is, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you, Ben, so much.
Real pleasure. Great talking to you, Michael. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright.